So Spencer, I'd like to start with you, kind of with the question that I like to start with everybody with, the starting point. Can you take me back to when swimming was introduced to you as a sport?
Yeah, so I'm like obviously from Holland, Michigan. So grew up right next to the lake. In fact, grew up right on the lake. So when all like me and both my sisters were very, very young, my parents put us into swim lessons because it made sense. And out of the three of us, I was the only one that really liked it and wanted to do it or wanted to keep doing it. And then when I was around 4 or 5 years old, I developed a kidney infection caused by reflux, which, long story short, my bladder just didn't really work correctly, and had to have surgery when I was 5. And so after that surgery, I was not allowed to do any contact sports for the next couple of years while I like healed correctly. And also because, and even to this day, both my kidneys together function at 100%. And it wasn't like, and that's recent. As I was growing up, that was not the case. So like I always needed both. Could never risk losing one. So swimming was what I did. And I was never, or at least growing up for a long time, like I wasn't the best at it, but I grew to love it. And also it was really all I could do. So I didn't really have a choice. So yeah, so I definitely started before a lot of people. But I think I have like a pretty specific reason to do so.
That's really cool. I'm familiar with your sister's success as well, but tell me about the family dynamic, the siblings, the ages, and kind of how you fit into your family.
Yeah, so my mom and my dad, and then my older sister, 2 years older than me, or yes, 2 years older than me. And then my younger sister, 2 years younger than me. Actually 3 years younger than me, jeez. So my whole family, I mean, my little sister didn't start swimming until a little bit later. She kind of started swimming because I was swimming. My older sister swam in middle school, simply to get the for sport award in middle school. She absolutely hated it and wanted nothing to do with it. My whole family are basketball players, and I tried it and couldn't even make it through like the week-long camps that West Ottawa puts on over the summer when I was younger. Just uncoordinated, didn't like running, didn't all this stuff just was not for me. So definitely I was the odd one out in the family. Only swimmer in my extended family as well. But it just seemed to fit, and I was perfectly fine with not being able to be coordinated enough to do land sports.
So tell me, what you mentioned at the beginning there that you didn't necessarily find a ton of success right away, or I think you said I wasn't the best at it. I think that might have been how you said it. When did you experience a little bit of success that inspired you forward that you could be good at this?
I think it wasn't until, so I had made, so like I joined like the USA style of club swimming when I was 8, and I had that fall season, that my first season, and I didn't make state, but then every season after that I had made state, the state level competition. And I even there, like for my age group, I was probably generally top 16 in my events. But also,
are you saying through like 10 and unders and 12 and
yeah,
unders?
yeah. So
yeah, in that age range.
Yeah. And I also had Kyle Maas on my team, and at that age he was very, very fast. And so because of that, he was also friends with a lot of the fast people that you've probably interviewed throughout the state, Camden Murphy, Devon Nowicki, Cameron Craig, like all those guys throughout the state. He was friends with at a young age. And because I was like just behind him, like I tried to kind of follow him and follow them and learn as much as possible from them and what they were doing. And it was around when I was 12 years old, I decided I didn't want to be a butterflyer anymore because it was just too much. And I decided I wanted to be a backstroker. I liked swimming backstroke, so I swam 200 and 100 back. And that summer, I won state in 200 and 100 back. And I was like, wow, like this is crazy. I then went to zones through being 14, focused on backstroke of all things. And so even that still, like competing on the zone level, I was getting better, definitely getting better, starting to realize this is kind of what I want to do, realizing that it's potential to do it in college. And so I definitely focused even more then, but that was still even like those pre-high school years. And then once I was going into high school, my freshman year at 14 years old, I was going to be like, I was still kind of a butterflyer, but kind of put it to the back burner, and then was told I was going to have to be the butterflyer going into high school. And so I was like, all right. So I swam the 100 in high school, or at least the first couple of years, and was okay with it. And then I think when I was 16, one of my friends who was also on my high school team, Matt Denave, finally was like, here's the thing. Your 500 is really good. Your 200 free is really good. You're a butterflyer. Swim the 200 fly. Just do it. You'll surprise yourself. And like that was an event that was probably the only event that brought me to tears when I was younger. Not just because it was super hard, but just because it was hard for me to find any success in it. And so that summer I swam it at just a random meet. My coach let me suit up at finals, and I think I went at 207. This was long course, and made junior nationals, then went to junior nationals and dropped, I think, the 5th fastest time in the country for my age group, and was like, all right, I'm a 200 butterflyer. This is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to focus on. And it kind of took off from there, really.
Well, that's a long journey. But I think that breakthrough at 12 that you described, and winning your first state championship, and you also kind of talked about, your relationship with, the Maas's, and I see Kevin is coming on like gangbusters this weekend, and there's going to be another one in the pipeline, it sounds like. But tell me about let's talk a little bit more about that training environment. In talking with some of these MLA guys over the last, couple months, it's, there's 5, 6 of them that are probably going to be a part of this project that I'm working on. And I would imagine that the training environment, as you were coming through, had to be really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think that just the fact that there's 5 or 6 guys that even you're talking to is enough in itself to just show that there was that environment over here on the west side of the state, for quite a while. And I mean, so growing up though, I swam for the West Iowa Swim Club, and it until probably around like that 12 years old, like that early end of middle school, early high school range, it was a pretty small team. And our coaching we had our USA coaches, but then Steve Boyer, the high school coach, kind of took us over as we got a little bit older, and kind of brought us in with the high schoolers and did like their style of workouts. So really, there was a small group of guys, that like we knew each other, we knew what we were capable of, and so it didn't really matter what the practice was. We pushed each other constantly. And then it was my junior year of high school. My club coach, or West Ottawa USA swimming coach, left. This was now like our second coach that we had gone through, but we were still, him and I were still like, this is what we want to do. It's him and I, we're going to push each other. Like we were still seeing success, but as both of us were getting into that phase of, it's now time to look into college and really ramp up training if we want to be competing on a national level, which we both did. We needed a little bit of a change. And right at that point, Jim Whitehead, who was coaching for Southern Michigan Aquatics for however long, decided to come be the head coach of MLA. And Kyle knew him really well from being friends with Cameron, Craig, and I kind of knew who he was, but didn't really know him that well. Kind of a funny story. He was my like coach on deck at a sectional meet that our coach wasn't able to be at, and it was 100 back, and I was just made it into one of the finals because Kyle had actually gotten DQ'd in the prelim swim, and Jim fought the DQ, got Kyle in and kicked me out. And he had no idea it was me, whatever. And when we were having our meeting with him to like discuss switching over the team, I explained that to him, and he was like so apologetic, like he had no idea it was me. But like that kind of started like a relationship that I was able to have with him, and that we were just both there to have fun. And I think that then Kyle and I coming into this team that he was rebuilding, essentially, like Ian was there, there were a few girls there, Tabahn was gone at that point, but we were kind of like, he put it on us to rebuild this team and try to get people to realize like how hard, intense, super fast swimming can be really fun with the right team. And so he put that on us, and Skylar Cook Weeks as well. And I think we did a great job. And now that team has grown to being one of the national level teams, especially in the Midwest area. And I think that's a testament to just how much he wanted to have fun with working hard. So I think that was super cool, and definitely what helped me propel me to success.
I mean, that's one of the things that really stood out to me in my interview with Tabahn was he talked about how when he went to his first juniors and was trying to swim some of his biggest performances as a kind of a breakout swimmer, he said that one of his motivations was to put MLA on the map. And I'm thinking about him saying that, and I'm like, that's like 7 years ago. And
Yeah.
MLA is all the way on the map now, you know, and so like what you're saying, it's really happened extremely quickly, you know, like for MLA to make such an impact so quickly. You know, you talked about, you know, you touched on Jim, and he has been, I want to say hello to him. He has been a huge friend of the project here as I've been getting going here over the last few months. And Ian is a steady follower and liker of my content as well. So I'm huge fans of those guys for supporting me from afar. But, you know, tell me about other influences, or maybe you might want to expand more on those guys and their impact. But I'm curious about who some of the most important influences in your swimming career as you were coming up were.
Yeah, so I think for me, and this it was part of the reason I was so successful, but then also led to some of the issues I've dealt with recently. But for me, it was a lot of, because it was kind of just me and Kyle going through the West Ottawa program, I did whatever I needed to do to make myself better. A lot of the things I was working on outside of the pool. I did on my own, like lifting, dry land, like eating, like all that kind of stuff. It was really just me researching and figuring out what I needed to do for myself. But then also, like, especially in high school, having Steve Boyer be my head coach, I think was super important just because of how much he wanted us to like expand our horizons beyond just swimming. And because to him, he was a high school swimming coach, and that's what he dedicated his time to, and he did a great job on that. And so because he was solely dedicated on the high school season, he didn't expect us and like our teammates to be super focused on it outside of the high school season as well. I mean, I was, but I think having him have that support, like not a lot of people get now growing up swimming. It's like all of a sudden you start only swimming at 10 years old, and I don't think I could have ever done that. I played water polo middle school through high school, played football in middle school, and then did track in high school as well. And so I've had a number of different coaches growing up, and so each one of them has definitely like just had a little bit of a different role in shaping me. And then I think once it came to Jim, him and our relationship is really interesting. I think, like I said, didn't know him that well going into it, and yet because he put so much pressure on me at the start of, like, I came into that team and he said, "This is your team. We're gonna make this team great," and that's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I was so used to putting all that pressure on myself that, yes, it was a ton of pressure, but it's kind of weird. But like having someone else do it, it was different. And I think that was huge for me. And him and I just became friends. Like I said, he wanted this thing to be about fun and working hard, but having fun while doing it. Him and I were friends. Our relationship was not, he was obviously in charge, but he was constantly bantering with me, with Kyle, with some of the other older guys, constantly taking ideas from us, trying to figure out what's the best way to make this sport, as grueling as it is, as fun as possible. And I think that was probably like the best thing for me, and especially for everyone around us.
Well, I know the Alec Moles and the Tony Andersons out there that are big water polo players in Michigan history love it when I slip in a water polo question here, but I'm always interested in how water polo helps a swimmer. Some of the guys that I've talked to have said that, it was interesting because, maybe it kept me out of the water a little bit, I should say out of swimming, and they wonder if maybe that held them back in some ways. And then I've talked to other swimmers that said, no, it kept my mind fresh, and it kept me in the water, and it kept me kind of from getting burned out on the sport. And I find each guy's kind of water polo story to be unique. How did how did water polo impact your swimming?
Well, so actually water polo for me was a much bigger deal than just, I'm going to do it for swimming or I'm going to do it in place of swimming. I was very heavily considering playing water polo in college instead of swimming. It really wasn't until like my junior year, when all that success in swimming started to happen, that I decided, okay, like swimming's going to be my real focus. But so throughout that whole time, like I was doing both at the same time. And even my senior year, I was going into the junior nationals that I wanted to fly in. I was a captain of the water polo team. I wanted to be there. It was one of my favorite sports ever to do. So I would swim in the mornings. I had water polo games, lift on those other mornings that I didn't swim. So I was going 5 mornings a week, and then in the afternoons, if I had a game, I had a game. But if not, I would swim right after school for 2.5 hours, and then go from there. And our water polo practice was after the girls' swim practice, so would then go and play water polo for another 2 hours. And that was every day, and I loved it. And it was water polo was so hard, but it was enough different and such like a different kind of mindset that I was able to do it. Like swimming, you've got your head down, you're always in your own brain, you're always thinking about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and there's really, at least while you're swimming, no one else to like bounce that off of. But when you're playing on like a team sport like that, and one that's so heavily reliant on constant communication, even while swimming and being extremely out of breath, I think it takes away that like sense of feeling like you're going crazy, and you're able to kind of like throw that off on other people, and everyone understands that. So like people do it to you too, and having that back and forth was definitely something I needed, and it allowed me to kind of like decompress from swimming or whatever else I was dealing with. That helped me keep my love for swimming, because that's ultimately like what I truly wanted to do. So
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about these specific years here. And I want to talk to you kind of bridging your freshman and sophomore year together. You know, in looking back at, you know, your state meet performances, your freshman year, I'm sure you were disappointed in being 17th in the IM and just barely missing, you know, getting to come back in, you know, and you did make a consolation final in the 100 butterfly, but the swimmer that we see as a sophomore, you changed from the IM to the 200. You're a 140, 200 freestyler now, top 3 in the Division I meet. I think you also broke 50 in the 100 butterfly that year, from going, I want to say around 52 mid the year before, so a really significant drop. And so maybe instead of getting so tied up in who you were as a freshman, can you tell me about, you know, and maybe we're linking a little bit of the stories together here of, you know, your club work and stuff, but tell me about what evolved and changed for you from that freshman year as kind of being a very good, I don't want to say you were anything, you're a good freshman swimmer, you know, to swim 2 events at the state meet, but you started to appear to be very good in that sophomore year. Tell me about what changed there.
See, that one's kind of hard because like my freshman to sophomore year, I think was just an increased workload. I think what I was doing up until that point, what like we had enough of a break in between swim seasons, and when I wasn't like fully in a swim season, like playing water polo or something, I was more focused on that and not as focused on swimming. But then going into my sophomore year, and then like you had said, after my freshman year, kind of going, this is not really where I want to be. Seeing what could potentially become of me if I put in a little bit more work. And I think that's kind of really all that transition that year was just consistency in training, consistency and hard work, and not being like, oh, I'm going to work hard here and not here just because I'm tired. It was kind of that it was one thing to know what you want and think about what you want, but then being on that level and seeing what you want, it kind of like kickstarts you and gets you a little bit of a fire to go, okay, yeah, what do I actually need to be doing to reach that? And like I said, like that freshman and sophomore year, I don't even think I scratched the surface on what I needed to be doing until then after my sophomore year. But like through that point, it was like, I just need to work hard, I think. And then using that to build off of in the future, I think was what propelled me even after that.
You know, so obviously you've gone on and done some really cool things. You've already touched on a junior national championship that we'll get to in a second here. And I would imagine, just looking at you on paper, that the state meet in 2016 probably had to be one of the cooler days of your weekends of your entire life to that point. And I want to start with your first high school state championship in the 200 freestyle. You touched out Ryan Vandermeulen, who of course went on and swam at Ohio State, by 1/100th of a second in the 200 freestyle. You go 1:37.15, which is about a 3-second drop over what you had done the year before to I think finish third. So again, as we talked about, you had a big kind of breakthrough as a freshman sophomore to go from a consolation or just outside swimmer to a guy that was clearly in the top 3 or 4 in his events. And now you're winning both events, and we'll get to the butterfly in just a second. But take me back to that 200 freestyle and what that first state championship and winning a tight race over a very good swimmer, what that meant to you.
Yeah, that was, it was crazy, especially because that was at the Aquatic Center. So it was in Holland. Everybody was there. That was the first swim meet I've ever seen some of my like normal high school friends at. So it was definitely a different experience from the beginning. And so he wasn't in my heat in prelims, obviously. I was the second seed going in. So it being circle seeded, I was in the heat before him. And, you know, talking with Steve kind of that whole year, really, because there were still a couple other people swimming in the state that I like to kind of envision racing next to and doing all this stuff, especially throughout dual meets throughout the year. And Steve knew that. And so we kind of just had this joke about swimming my own race, which essentially was like a serious point, but versus swimming with someone else or doing some other strategy just for the fun of it, just to try to see how it goes. And that Friday afternoon in prelims, we kind of were talking, like, just swim your own race, see how it goes. We'll get you into finals and not really worry about it. I think going into the meet, I was at like a 1:38 or something. And then I ended up going a 1:37 in prelims, and which totally shocked me, just being able to do that, being completely relaxed. And I'll never forget getting out of the water, walking over to watch the next heat with Steve and watching him touch. And I think he touched just like a little bit faster than me in his prelim swim. And I turned to Steve and I go, "So can I swim his race tomorrow?" And he laughed and he was like, "You know what? Let's do it." So that's kind of what the plan was going into the next day. We were like, I've got nothing to lose. I've had my focus on the 100 fly, really. And this was just icing on the cake at this point. And so he's like, "Let's do it. Let's go for it. See how it works." So I did exactly that. I swam with him every single 50. Kind of lost him a little bit on that 150 mark, turning into the last 50. And at that point, I was just like, wait a minute, what do I have to lose here? So going into that last wall, I flipped and made it a point to do 5 dolphin kicks off the wall. And in the one video I have of it, I can hear, it wasn't Steve, but one of the East Kentwood coaches who like we became really good friends with. He goes, that was it right there. And then I ended up winning the race, essentially because of that. And touching there, and like, it was crazy to me, especially because everyone's running over after I touch, and I looked and saw and just put my head down in the water and was just like, I don't even know how to react. And they're all coming over going crazy, and I'm just sitting there like, this actually just happened. Like, this is swimming now. This is fun. This is what I want to do for the rest of, as long as I can. This is why I do this. Like all of that was just in my head at that time. I like couldn't even think about being like happy that I won. I was just happy to like that I made the right decision for swimming in that race and like everything to that point, and it was just wild.
That's a really great story, you know, like not just that you won the race, but that there was like an intrinsic value to it, you know, that you came out of that race, that it had meaning, and that it was kind of a breakthrough moment for you mentally. You know, as you go on in that meet, I see a 48:12, I want to say, in the butterfly. I think your 48:1 is still like one of the 3 fastest 100 butterfly times in Michigan high school history at that time, as you came out of that weekend. And so I can just imagine the volume of all of this. You know, you think about what's going to happen in this next year as you're heading towards a junior national championship. What did that particular weekend, not just in terms of you grasping everything you just said, that this is what I want to do for as long as I can, but confidence, you know, that you could then take that onto the national scene and have success. What did you find that weekend in terms of who you are and who you thought you could be?
So actually, I'll take it back a step because
Please.
it wasn't that weekend.
Okay.
It was my first junior nationals ever in the fall at Georgia Tech, and I went. Was it then? Yes. I went 2 lifetime bests in my 100 fly. I was a 48, I think like 7 or something in the 100 fly, and then I was a 147 in my 200 fly. And I got, I think like 5th or 6th in both events. And actually in my 200 fly, I was seated 2nd going into finals for my morning swim. But coming out of that meet, I remember I was coaching the West Ottawa age groupers at the time, and my head club coach, Dan Kimball, at the time, he was there, and I got back and wanted to go to practice coach practice that next day, even though I was exhausted from being on a plane all day. And it was kind of weird and kind of embarrassing, but I saw him, and when I got to practice and like got the kids warming up, and then went to talk to him, and he was like, congratulations, all this stuff, because he wasn't at the meet. And I just broke down. I was mostly because I was exhausted, but also at that meet, like I was saying, like my freshman to sophomore year, being able to see these fast swimmers, it was a completely different level at this meet. This is where the best of the best 18-unders in the country are. And yes, I've gone 2 lifetime bests, and yes, I established myself as one of the top 5 in the country. For some reason, I just realized like how much more I had to do if I really wanted to be the best, because the margin of from where I was in the top 8 to the best was still quite a bit. And so I just broke down. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, it's going to take so much more out of me, so much more to get to that point. And that right there was like that shift I had in swimming and in life, and really wanting and doing whatever it took to get myself to where I wanted to be. So then going into that high school season, I kind of had, because of that meet and because of that experience I had and everything I decided to change about myself and my lifestyle to help my swimming success, even though I wasn't really expecting to win the 200 free, I was expecting to win the 100 fly. But I went into that meet with a different swagger and a different confidence that I have now since then used to my advantage in swimming, and being able to like I was talking about with Jim, have fun with the sport, but now it was having fun winning, and I knew what I could do, and so I just loved being able to. I mean, I was never like the biggest guy, but I let my times intimidate people, and I kind of like that because I was always like from that meet so intimidated by everybody else that I finally got to do the intimidating, and that confidence and that swagger was what really showed me that I could do what I wanted to do in the sport.
So let's build right there into your next junior nationals. So the next summer, 2016, 151 plus in the 200 freestyle, but 201 in the 200 butterfly, which is a really big performance. And earlier in the conversation, you talked about a 207 as a breakthrough swim that got you to your first long course juniors. 201, it puts you in a different place at those juniors. And then you build into the winter where you swim 136, I think at your next short course juniors, which was your fastest 200 freestyler, I think as kind of a junior swimmer. 200 freestyle as a junior swimmer, and I think 144 plus in the 200 butterfly. So these next two juniors, you get to really enjoy everything that you're talking about of kind of going from being intimidated by those around you to really competing at an extremely high level. We could dive into any of those four swims. I'm interested in which of those you're most proud of, at those junior national championships, and which ones meant the most to you. But it just kind of big picture, those like 6 months where you went to those couple of juniors and really got to enjoy that type of success that you had been working so hard for and talking about here in the last 10, 15 minutes. What did all that mean, and what did you take from those performances?
So actually in that 6-month period as well, there was one more even bigger meet, Olympic trials that summer.
Of course.
And really that was the one, because it was that sectionals after the high school state meet that I qualified for it in. And being at that meet, we didn't rest for it. Like maybe a couple days, we suited up, we being me and Kyle and Jim being there as our coach. But like that meet, and so I added, I think, like a second and a half of my best time, but actually still moved up 20 places, and was like 100 something in the 100 fly. And it was really that meet that was like, I was in the team room or in the ready room, like Michael Phelps was in the row behind me, like getting ready to swim his 100 fly. And I tell people that, and they're like, weren't you going crazy? Like, he was like, Michael Phelps was right behind you. And I like, it's as cocky as it sounds. I was like, no, like he's there to do his job and swim his race. And that's what I'm here to do. Like, that's what we're like, I belong here. I'm not here to be some crazy fan kid anymore. I'm here to race. And that was the one that was like, I belong on this stage, and I belong in this elite community of swimmers. And that was definitely like probably the best experience of swimming that I've had in a long time.
Before we get back to those juniors, tell me about the pyro. Like, I've heard a couple of Olympic guys that have gone to trials talk about just how outrageous the scene is. Like, many guys had never swum in a situation where there were that many people there, but also, just the scene that is created by USA Swimming there. What was all that like to kind of manage as a 16-year-old?
It was absolutely wild, and then that's why I'm so happy that we went into that meet not putting any pressure on it, because I was able to sit back and just take all of that in. I didn't have to worry about like, oh, I have to swim fast, I have to do this. I was able to, like, I sat in the stands the night before my race and watched it all happen. I got there halfway through the meet, so I didn't get to see like the opening stuff, which is absolutely amazing. But they still put on a show every single night. And so I was just able to have fun with all of that. And it was so wild. Just because we were in this huge complex, And in one of the rooms, there was this like trade show / carnival thing going on, like next to the pool. You're like, this is more than just a swim meet. This is a national event. And it was so cool to see all that happen. And I'm so glad I was able to like sit back and enjoy all of that while having fun swimming, rather than like putting so much pressure on it, because I got to see some of the most like amazing things like that the sport has to offer.